All right, welcome back, fellow surfboard shapers. Where are we at on this wooden surfboard build? Well, in the last video, I profiled out the blank. I thinned it out so that it's to the thickness that I want in the nose, the tail, and in the middle. And next, it's to shape the rails. So how do we do this? So I'll just mention a few things and then we'll get into just doing it. And I also have previous videos on how to shape this on my channel, if you could check out those ones as well. I haven't watched them in a while. I think they're fairly accurate. So for shaping the rails, if you're just starting out, I think one of the best things you can do is do some due diligence, read up on the internet on how to shape rails, but especially head over to Greenlight Surf Supply. They have a really good write-up on how to shape the rails, and they have some PDFs that you can download, and they have some written information and examples of sample rails on how to shape the rails and how to specifically mark out rail bands to remove the material on the board for shaping. And it's really, really great. It helped me out when I first started out. For me, I generally don't follow their guide as much anymore because I kind of have an idea of how I want my rails to be shaped, and I do still mark them out, but I kind of just eye it, and I have a rough idea of how I would like my rails to look. For this board, I'm gonna go for a rail that is more, not as aggressive as like a shortboard rail, so really, small and thin, but not as boxy or as big as, say, a longboard rail that's nice and full, at least more traditional longboards, not like a performance longboard or anything like that, but nothing too thick, so it's not too hard to sink the rail into the wave. So I'm gonna go somewhere in between. It'll be easier just to show you how I shape this board, and then you can decide how you want to shape your rails. Don't go by necessarily what I do. Do some research on maybe a surfboard that you already have that you like. Go to your surf shop, look at some boards, see the type of rails that maybe what you're looking for, and then you can kind of figure it out just by trial and error. It's easier to not remove as much material than it is to remove too much material from the rails and then left with a rail that's too thin. So don't go too aggressive first. You can always remove more material later. And if the rail isn't, looking as good as the way that you would like, then you can keep, removing the material. So I think we should just get right into starting to shape the rails, and I'll do a little explanation as I go. But again, the PDFs over at Greenlight Surf Supply. I'm not sponsored by them, although I might get an affiliate link from them. So if you buy anything, if you use my affiliate link, that'll help me out. So yeah, their PDFs for how to shape rail bands are really great. Check those out. Well, let's get right into it now. Oh, and one quick last thing. I just want to talk about how important it is to have a good design for your rails, because you don't want a rail that's too chunky, or you don't want it too thin, because then it won't provide you much float. You gotta find a balance in between. I just gonna mention real quick, previously I had shaped the board and I thought it'd be really smart, and I would leave the rails really, thick and chunky. That way they would be like super floaty. But what ended up happening is the board performed awful. It was a real pig in the water. It wouldn't turn. It was hard to catch waves, if you could imagine that. It was almost more like a really big bodyboard. Because it was too floaty, it was hard to drop down into the wave when you were paddling, and you know how when you get to that teeter-totter point and you're trying to just, fall down into the wave, the board just was not good. So I had left the rails, the board itself a little too thick, the rails a little too chunky, and it just didn't perform well. So rail design, really important. All right, let's talk about what I've done now. So for my board, I'm going, like, this is 2 3/4 of an inch thick, and I went 1 inch 5/8. Now I know 1/2 is 1 inch 3/8, and I apologize to people who are more into the metric system. I'm going to go 1 inch 5/8 up from the bottom of the board, of the blank, and measured up, and I made a mark in the middle. And then over here on the nose, right here, I went up about 1 inch. So I'm just kind of going with nothing too aggressive. So you can see here that it's more than halfway with my 1 inch mark. And then back here on the tail, 1 foot. I guess I should have mentioned that mark up there was 1 foot from the nose, and this is 1 foot from the tail, and then the middle mark was, of course, was in the middle. Right here, I went 3/4 of an inch, so it's a little thinner. It's almost, I think back here I actually went 1/2. This is purely based on just my experience and how I want the rail to look. Again, when you're shaping a rail, when you're shaping a surfboard, don't go with anything too weird or too aggressive. Make sure things flow, the line. Like if you had this line, let's say way up here or way down here from the middle point when you're drawing your line back, when you connect your line, it doesn't look right. So use a little judgment, a little common sense, and that'll get you by. On the deck, I've done on the tail 1 inch 3/4 in, so this will remove this much material back here. So you can kind of imagine it'll form a triangle when I remove the material. On the middle here, I went in 2 inches, and then I went in 4 inches for my second rail band. So I drew 2 rail bands at the same time on the deck. And the second rail band will come into play later. But the first rail band, we're going to use this first mark on the side, and then this first mark on the deck, and then we're going to remove that material, and then we'll remove more material based on the second line later. And then up here at the nose, I went 1.5 inches in, and then 3 inches in, and then I took a dowel and I connected everything. Nice smooth arcing lines, no weird angles, no weird arcs, and then I kind of had them meet up at the nose here. And I thought it'd be important to show you back here real quick how I connected these lines. I went back from that second point and it just swooped up and then up to the top on the back here. And then here it kind of, if you look, it's just got a nice smooth arc all the way back. Same with the second line, and same on the other side as well. So that's what the tail looks like. Also, noise canceling headphones, awesome for working around power tools. You can even listen to music or podcasts or the radio. It's really great. First mark, deck mark 1, deck mark 2, then this is the facet that was removed. Okay, now that I've marked the middle of in between this first facet that was removed, the material, now I drew a line across here, and now we're going to remove the material in this top section. So that'll be the second facet. So we'll have 1, and then it'll be like 2. Now that I have these 2 facets cut, or rail bands, cut into the wooden blank, I'm going to recap of what I've done and what I'm going to do. So, I've removed the first rail band, then I made a mark from the removed material for that first facet, and then I've removed the material from the second rail band to that middle mark that I made, and then remove that material. Next, I need to remove material on the bottom, and that's called the tuck of the board. So that's the lip that goes underneath to the bottom of the board, and it's a very, very minute, small amount of material we're going to remove. I'm going to stop probably anywhere from 24 inches to 22 inches, maybe even 18 inches on the rear part of the board. So the tuck will only be from maybe here forward of the board, and then the back here will have a really nice sharp edge, and that sharp edge releases water, and you want water to release on the back of tail of the board. Just generally what you want to do for board design, going on past experience and all of the research I've done. So maybe it's easier if I draw out what I'm going to do now. So we have the deck of the board right like this. Then we have the first facet, or second facet I should say, first facet, or rail bands. I don't know why I'm calling them facets, they're not diamonds. The side of the board, then the tuck, and then the bottom of the board. I'm not very good at drawing, but you kind of get the idea that we have these rail bands cut. Now, if you want to remove more material, you could make another mark in here and then remove more material. So you could make a mark here and then a mark in the center between these 2 lines, and then remove this material and then smooth it out. So I'm happy with what I've done. So this represents this right here, this one represents this over here, and then this is the side of the board. The tuck I have yet to cut in, but like I said, I'll probably just cut that in by hand or sand that in by hand. Probably maybe, I might go 1/4 of an inch. Next step, to sand in the tuck, get that done. And then I'm going to start removing and smoothing out these hard angles. And I do that by removing this material here and just smoothing it out. And then blending it in with this next, I guess, point. And then same with here, I'll want to remove a bunch of material here until we eventually get this nice smooth rail. So it'll look something like that. And then this material will be removed off. But it's easy to do because you've already removed a bulk amount of material. So you'll just make long, even passes and get rid of the sharp top edge or point, and then work your way all the way around the rail. And then on the bottom here, try not to work too much on this side because this is going to be the bottom of the board. Just smooth this out a little bit, and then that'll actually just come along real easy. And you'll be left with a nice round rail. I think I'm going to mark this tail section 18 inches where I want the tuck to end. So it's going to be soft all the way from the nose back to here. So back here it's going to be a hard rail, nice sharp, clean angle. For the tuck, I'm going to do 1/4 of an inch, I think, after looking at this. And I'm just putting rough marks here for when I sand, that I'll just have a little bit of a reference. And also mark the side as well. Here is 18 inches up from the tail, from the back, and then this will be the hard rail. And so I'm going to blend this in. So first I'm going to remove this material, then I'm going to blend this in with the rest of the rail. Okay, so we got the rail band for the tuck cut now, this 1/4 of an inch. And again, what will happen is this will get smoothed out later once we start blending all of the rail bands together. So you can see, nice, smooth, long, even cut. I just want to take a second and explain what's going on back here, where we're going from the transition of the tuck of this rail band that we just shaped in on the bottom of the board into the hard rail on the last 18 inches of the board. You want this transition to be nice and smooth. Right now we got this little bump here. That's not what we want. So what we want to do eventually, I might not do it now, I might do it when I'm actually sanding the board and feathering it all together, is you want to sand this down so it matches in and then kind of blends in with it, keeping a 90-degree, nice sharp rail on the back here. And then the same with the top. So you're going to sand the top and the side in together at the same amount so that it matches in on with this soft rail, and then blend it all together. So nice and sharp in the back so it releases water, nice and round here. Now I'm gonna just blend in these rail bands, smooth them out, and round them off. Also, I have a plastic bag on because, well, in the winter, because the air's so dry, the wood dust just clings to you like crazy. Alright, so that'll be it for this video. I've got the board foiled, I've got the rail shaped, the rail bands are done, then I've blended those rail bands together so I have this nice smooth rounded edge around the surfboard, but I've left a little extra meat on the surfboard, so I'm not done completely shaping it. So when I chamber it and then glue it back together, if things don't glue back 100% perfect and things don't line up, I have a little bit of extra meat wood in order to kind of just reshape the board a little bit. So that's my idea anyway. So overall, I'm super happy, super stoked how well this is coming along. My belt sander broke while working on this right near the end, which leads back to one of my tips back in the intro video: buy the best tool you can afford. Actually, it's this guy here, this old Skill belt sander that wasn't that expensive. I picked this up a couple years ago when I had to do a flooring job for someone, and I've had it for years. And yeah, it's not that great, so I'm gonna buy a good one, hopefully. I'm gonna shop around and see what's out there. The other thing I have to do is put a fin system in this. I'm gonna go with fin boxes on this board. Now ideally I probably should have went with wooden fins, but I want maximum flexibility, so I don't want to do a glass on fin system. I want to actually have fin boxes on this board, probably a 5-fin system, so that way I can reconfigure it depending on the surf conditions or how I want to ride this board. If you want to know how to do glass on fins though, you can check out some of my previous videos. I've done those before, especially on the last build. Yeah, I think that'll be it for this video. Next video, chambering. So if you like this video, give that like button some love, and I will see you guys in the next video.